fixed, but it's going to take 15 seconds for me to find out because I'd like the chat room to let us know how it's going. So please, everybody who is tuned in, please do us a favor and let us know if the audio is better. Yeah, hearing both of us is pretty important too. Okay, so everybody's saying good. So I'm going to work this experience into personal dimensioning. If you have been following my YouTube channel, you notice one of the earliest videos I put in there involves questioning, and this is some time ago, 2 years ago, questioning the concept of bubble realities. And in the theory of bubble reality, it talks about everybody independently having an experience, but also choosing a reality to sort of like jump into and having like your own special world, like your own little private little zone of reality. There's a lot of fictional literature that goes into this, like Alice in Wonderland, where you walk into an experience, and some people will say that was an experience on drugs or something like that, like mushrooms especially. But there's many different ways in order to identify that you're in a personal reality. Only the realities that we live in are so dynamically strong, it's extremely convincing as to however it currently is. So in certain terms of like changing your experience, it's very difficult because you have to make the shift in the rift of thinking or a grounded experience so that you're going from what seems like a reality once new to one that's very different. So for one way of imagining it is much like when you're in a different state of mind, say you drink alcohol or you get high on weed or acid or something like that. You'll note you change your state of mind and your kind of experience changes quite quickly. Now, you'll say you even become like a different person, right? Other people will say different, of course, because your mind's in a different place. It's in a different scalar vibration. So as much as our reality is a product of what we observe and repeat, so we say I see a door, therefore I walk over and I can turn the knob and I walk through it, and that's a door for me. That's my experience. Much of this consensus, this idea that everything is easy to perceive, is shared between people. So people say, I've got a door and you see a door. We both can walk through the same door and treat it the same way. And we end up with what we'll call consensus reality, where we believe in something because somebody else is believing something. But it's a lot like a shared dream. Now, if you know when you have dreams, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen in a dream. And yet, everything that I've gone through has shown me that a dream is just another form of reality. One that's a lot less concrete, one that has a lot less consistency, and has a lot less collaboration with other individuals. Okay, so right here, this is a dream reality, but we've cemented all the conditions between us, between you and I. We've cemented this agreement that we're having this conversation. And just like there's the listeners, I can only have a mild idea of what their experience is watching this show. I'm assuming it has a lot of similarities as to what I'm seeing my preview is, right? But in the same vein, everybody still has a very unique approach. Like somebody's in their living room, someone's watching from their studio, someone's got heavy metal playing in the background, someone is watching this 2 days later, okay? So we can say, this is a common experience that we can point to. Julien is saying this, and even though I'm saying this 15 seconds before everyone else notices it, we just come to agree, sure, I'm not exactly on point with Julien. I'm listening to his concepts 15 seconds later, but it doesn't matter. At a consensus, we assume this is all happening, and just as appropriate. We don't debate over the fact that because I'm 15 seconds before everyone that sees this, I'm in a more valid reality or not. I'm not telling everybody, hey, you guys are, you know, behind, and you know that sucks for you, and I'm living life in the moment. You guys are living life 15 seconds behind me. There's no point in bringing up those arguments, right? There's no point in having a dissertation about why we live slightly in flux to each other, okay? What does matter is what matters. Like, where does it matter? What matters if you can't hear us? I mean, Dawn and I can hear each other because we have a Skype connection. That works. Where it doesn't, you know, so where it doesn't matter is between Dawn and I. But when it does matter is, you know, through your five senses, what is not sort of caught up? Where are we, you know, lacking in our experience, right? So I could go off talking and maybe it's just a whisper or you can't hear me at all. And all you would get frustrated about not being able to hear me. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that my conversation isn't wonderful between Dawn and I. You just can't be a part of that bubbled reality in which we're exploring a conversation. So that's all. That's right. And so there's like bubbles within bubbles. And you'll note that everybody talks, you know, those gurus or whoever, you know, Eckhart Tolle, talk about the power of now or the power of being present, you know, Zen or what have you. And really, their point is talking about the only place where it comes through. Give me a moment. They're saying they can't hear you so well. Hold on a moment. Only because you probably didn't speak very much for some time. Okay.
Now?
You sound fine to me, so it's my end of the software.
Okay.
And we'll briefly go over it. So he was
okay. I'm back. Okay. Thank you.
So he was essentially confirming everything I say. I like it when people just are like, you know, say yes to everything I say because it makes okay. No. It makes the explanation so much easier. But the point here, and why I'm getting into this, is one of the great hiccups that a great deal of people are having is they're not understanding their fundamental, unique experience compared with someone else. And they're using the consensus reality as the end-all be-all. And so when we say consensus reality, I'm going to say in my consensus reality, I've lost Dawn. But I'll bring him right back. I can tell this is a challenging conversation to have. As we keep having these wonderful interruptions. Okay. So if you want to hit video there.
Got it. Okay, I lost you for everything on Skype, so.
Yeah.
Can you see?
My Skype crashed. I believe yours probably still ran, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So that's me.
Okay.
That's me using a lot of my processor to run things.
Yeah, I'm using up a lot of my processor just to listen to what you're saying. So keep going.
Closing down some things that might help. So where I was going is what I was talking about next. Where I was going was there's a great divide between people and understanding why they have other people in their world. In a dream, it doesn't matter. You know, you could push someone off a cliff. There's no consequences there. You know, you can even kill yourself. No consequences. No one's gonna mourn you. just because you died. Maybe you imagine a scenario where it's all about people mourning you because you die in a dream, but in this reality here, the consensus does matter. The consensus has an effect, and the big challenge is understanding that there's a difference between the consensus and the personal reality. It's like everybody agrees that, you know, like the blue on my headphones is blue, and that Don's shirt is blue. There's no need to argue there. But where there is an opportunity for us to have an argument and say, you know, you're kind of wearing purple, that's where there's actually some meat. That's where we're coming to sort of like, I have a different opinion than you do. Maybe it's our cameras. Maybe it's the lighting. We can get into all these different reasons for why my experience is slightly off from yours. And that's what people tend to focus on. And oftentimes, the usual word people are picking up for that, they just call it drama. That's drama.
Right.
Right? They're saying, why aren't we on the same page? Why can't we be on the same page? Relationships, if you've been in a relationship long enough, it gets down to that's what matters in the end. And I will drop Skype again. It turns out that Skype is not happy overall with the features we have here. Further testing will need to happen. All right.
Okay.
I was saying we'll have to do further testing with Skype.
Yes.
I may in the future, if nobody minds, drop the frame rate quality of my machine here. But at the moment, I'm actually gonna run my computer to run a really, really high fan so that it can be a little bit juicier processor. Whether that's understood by people or not, I don't think it's too big a deal. You might hear a whirring sound in the background. Just ignore that. That's my next test. So, consensus versus personal reality. One of the greatest mysteries. And it turns out that personal reality actually trumps consensus reality. Consensus reality is like the mold in which we've made so many agreements up to this point. Like, let's just say we drop 2 people on Earth who've never met another person before, and they're having a brand new Adam and Eve type experience. They need to decide what everything is. They're going to give it names. They're going to describe it in ways in which they can both agree. They eventually come up with a language, and they find out imagery that they can share, and purpose, and everything develops. We'll call that our culture, our society, our human experience together.
And consensus, that consensus has been an important part of what we've been doing up until this point in time, too.
Mm-hmm.
It was necessary and a vital part of not only using it for survival of the human race and in creating civilization and all of that, but now it's also helping contrast, show us the contrast of where we're going beyond this point in time.
That's right. And I would say that is part of what ascension is.
Right.
It is, you know, we talk about the new age, and I'm going to toss in ascension and new age interchangeably in a couple, you know, instances, even though they have their, you know, distinct defining differences. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a place where independently it's about finding out what our independent strength is to decide our experience versus being connected to a consensus reality that we can say is thousands of years old of humanity going through a process, even though it only takes you a lifetime to get to where you are right now. Like, you know, if anyone has ever had a child, like a baby, and you've watched it grow up, you realize it's trying to figure out how to fit into the consensus. Just like, you know, if you speak Spanish in your household, your child will grow up knowing Spanish better than other languages. But why do they also say the best time to teach a child languages when it's young? Well, because it's open to the fact that anything can mean anything. It's not going to fight you and say, that's not the right word for that. I don't want to use that word. You say mommy, I agree. I'm going to call you mommy. That's how we'll go. Very few children are so stubborn they can't accomplish a shift and developing level of perception so that they can work with the consensus and get along, right? You'll note on the playground, children have lots of interesting games that are like these social games of how to interact. It's all about the social interactions. In fact, most of the childhood years in school and through teenagehood is determining where you fit in a reality where there's lots of collaboration between individuals. Like, what kind of contributor are you? Like, how do you contribute to an experience? And so you find a niche, you find a purpose of your own, and you step out and you live that. And the more that you own that, the more that you feel that you can be successful, be effective, and be of value to your surroundings just in that way, right? Just exactly how you wish to contribute. Now, we know we're all born different. I was born in a family of 7 boys, and I'm right in the middle of all of them, 3 older, 3 younger. And I learned a lot about how people carve out their own personal identity and personal skill sets. It's funny because my family genetically have a lot of the same skill sets. It's really just, we're either artistic or we're mechanically inclined. So we're either like, you know, can fix cars and build houses, or we're on computers and we do art and build websites. You're either one or the other. And so, you know, the line is drawn. We've got half the brothers this way and half the brothers that way. And whenever we wanted to sort of like step over the line, like myself as the artist wanted to become like a mechanic, I realized I'm too flaky for that level of experience. And when the mechanic wants to become an artist, they find out that they can't access their creativity. They just know exactly a little bit more of the physical side of putting things together and physical experience. So I'll leave you a chance to comment.
Leave me a chance to comment?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, actually, I had kind of the same thing. I had 2 brothers, so there's 3 of us boys. And, yeah, I was distracted here because I was looking at a question in the chat room. But, yeah, it was very similar. And, but you find not only those groups in the family, but when you go to work, there's a group think quite often in the workplace that creates the consensus that moves how everybody thinks about how things are supposed to be happening and how everybody's supposed to react and that sort of thing. And you find that in religion.
Mm-hmm.
Also, yeah, almost any kind of group that we associate ourselves with, teams, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So, you know, we find ourselves, sometimes people call it culture, you know, a culture of this, a culture of that, you know, a culture of being, you know, a soccer mom, a culture of, you know, working in an office place. And you'll find that within each setting, like when you're driving your kid to school, you're the soccer mom, you're taking it to activities. But when you're in, you know, bed with your special someone, you're not a soccer mom, you have another identity. Okay? When you go out drinking, you're Lucy, and, you know, you have another kind of personality. And you might even find, you know, when you're with your certain friends, you're like this, and with other friends, you're like this. You kind of like are able to adopt different roles depending on what, where you are in that particular arrangement, right? You probably, I'm pretty sure everyone can agree on that. So
exactly.
With that in mind, that specific point in mind is where things get exciting. And that is where you can actually choose sort of like what your next clique will be, or your next group can be, or your next whatever it is you want to experience. And you can invite those that feel like they want to join you there. Some people call that a soul group. And you can also meet them. You may say, I need to find these kinds of people if I want to do this. If I want to live the high life, Hollywood life, I need to meet Hollywood friends or something. That's that's not for you to figure out, because that can get way too limiting. As in, if you try to figure out consciously how to do that, then you're going to feel less of the synchronicity of what gets you there, right? So when it comes down to what you want, focus on just what you want. Okay, so when you're creating reality, you say, I want $1 million, but I don't want the rich snobs. Just think $1 million. Don't think, just leave the rich snob concept behind. Because you can meet people that are not rich snobs. You just may have sort of like a prevailing idea that rich snobs come with being rich and being around rich people. So, you know, that's a really simple example. But it's almost as simple as pointing down what makes you feel good. And it sounds like, you know, a dream journal, and it sounds like, you know, airy fairy. That's not going to happen for me. But with the process of how that follows along is that what you have a problem with in that belief becoming true is what's going to show up. Just say, I want to be rich. I got to overcome my job obstacle. Maybe that's my obstacle because I'm in a job that doesn't make me rich. Maybe I need to win $1 million. I need to overcome the obstacle that I can beat the odds, right? I need to believe that I can beat odds by consistently focusing that I have beaten odds, right? Believing in the fact that I beat odds, and then I'll win lottery tickets because I'll be in that realm where that's more possible.
Well, but now here, Julien, I think to kind of open up a topic as far as this is concerned that may be different than the money, but I think a lot of people that are on this call and might listen to this recording are into this whole idea of, I want the world to change. I want a new age to be here, and so. What are your thoughts on that as far as this whole consensus idea?
So, remember how I was saying personal reality is greater than consensus reality?
Yes.
One, because the truth of consensus reality is that you also made that. Because you're first, consensus reality has also been your choice up to this point. Okay, just like if you are paying for gas at this much and you're used to paying for gas this much, you get upset when it's like cost twice as much, or when they tax you. Like, I'm getting upset because I liked it the way I want, and now I'm resisting the consensus that even though everybody has to pay more, I personally have a problem with paying more. I don't care about everybody else. My experience says I'm paying more now, and that's not what I wanted. So when you look at it in terms of consensus reality is actually a product of you, okay? It's another way of looking at personal reality as you. Now that's a really, really, really challenging to do because consensus reality has been developed by you over such a long period of time, and you've listened, just like the baby has been receiving from its parents and from its surroundings, what it's been. You've received ideas of what consensus reality will be your whole life. And so when you want to revisit that, that's what ascension is. That's basically where you're elevating your perspective of yourself. You know, you say you learn to connect with your higher being or your soul, and that element where you're raising your vibration. What that is really doing is that is substituting your old way of thinking with a level of thinking in which there are fewer paradoxes. You have more insight. You're able to see more clearly. You're not focusing on the limitations as much as you're focusing on opportunities. And so more opportunities create themselves for you, even in just lines of thought. You don't have to talk about money. You don't have to talk about people changing. They can just be ideas.
Okay, so like what you're saying is, once you start looking at the consensus reality, once you poke your eyeballs into that, whether you started looking at something when you were a kid or it's a new work environment and you're doing that, you're going to attract things that support that consensus reality. And so every moment that goes after that is you're going to be attracting things that support the consensus reality, and then that only reinforces what you've already decided to start experiencing. With ascension, and when you're taking it and doing it more personally, what you're doing now is you're removing yourself from the consensus, and you're able to say, okay, this is what I want to experience. And that will start attracting those things to you.
Yes.
And that will then reinforce your feelings about it, your experience of it, and then you'll keep moving on that path until you decide, actually, I want to experience something new. But you're doing it from that same position, that it's a personal experience as opposed to a humanity, United States of America, North America, that type of thing, world type of consensus.
Correct. So that's an awesome explanation, and done so much in a much shorter amount of time than I took.
Well, no, not really. But okay, so I'm going to move you on. Okay, because you said you wanted to talk about the Inner Earth and Corey Goode.
Earth chat that's going on. Yes, Corey Goode put out a couple of videos with David Wilcock, basically interviews. If you haven't caught them already, called Cosmic Disclosure, and he had a series where
Gaia.
On Gaia TV, or no, not Gaia TV. Now it's just called Gaia. Excuse me.
Gaia, yes.
And there's a lot of buzz about him talking about the sphere being alliance, saying that Zecharia Sitchin's view on and his writings on things like Inner Earth and history are off, and he called it out, and he said these are, a lot of people have been looking at ancient aliens and Inner Earth and all that from Zecharia Sitchin's point of view, and he's in disagreement. And he was surprised because this, the blue sphere, or the blue Avians, basically told him, yeah, it's off, it's wrong, right? That's not the case. More specifically, it got to the point where he was discussing his experience with the Inner Earth individuals, and he found himself in the middle of a conversation between the Blue Avians and the Sphere Alliance, and the Agartha Network, and they have many different names, and there's this sort of like, why wasn't there better communication? Why are they not working together a bit more here? The Inner Earth individuals see the Blue Sphere Alliance as the original guardians and protectors, and that they're coming back to help out, but like they had known them in their own history, like some time ago, like long ago, and that's generally the basics of where he was sharing, what was going on. He had some other interesting little tidbits, but where I wanted to get into discussing this conversation is that I'm going to share from where the Pleiadians discuss how entire societies have some really developed consensus realities, right? Like you've got Pleiadians that span millions and possibly billions of individuals, and they call themselves Pleiadians, much like we call ourselves humans, but there's quite a large variety of us. We still say we've got 5 fingers and 5 toes and all that, and Pleiadians have a great deal of consensus. In fact, they share an incredible amount of consensus with humans too, mind you. And where do they see this element where 2 spacefaring or highly technological and spiritual individuals can actually have this disconnect? Like, don't they just work well together? Don't they just fit together modularly in any situation? And the answer is not necessarily. It all depends on the circumstance. But I'm being guided towards this question because the Pleiadians want to bring in sort of an expert on this. Just give me a moment.
Okay. I'm going to leave you on your own for a bit. I got to be right back.
Okay. I have a female Pleiadian who has adopted the human name Victoria. More so for the inner meaning behind the energy that Victoria has come with. It is related to the word victory, but there's other reasons for that. She's sharing with me that there is a lot of communication right now with multiple species. She's using species. She also means cultures as well. But essentially spacefaring beings from various areas in this galaxy and from beyond that are in our solar system right now, becoming more and more aware of what's going on here on the planet. And they have the Pleiadians that I'm speaking with at this moment, including Victoria. She's pointing out that her ship very specifically is involved in furthering the coordination between the various spacefaring groups in the solar system at this time. And so her job and role is involved in helping iron out the differences that and the different perspectives that the many different space cultures have, and to sort of iron out and find this, this sort of common ground, almost like getting involved in deciding the new consensus. Now, since this ship basically gathers all electronic feeds that are, sent out to the satellites, such as television shows and radio waves, and basically download a great deal of the internet regularly and process that. They have tons and tons of individuals that also mill through that data and create algorithms for organizing the information. So from that perspective, they have a great deal of understanding what the human consensus is at this time. And that human consensus is involved in a shift, which is very similar to the shift that they essentially developed an edict or a mission statement or something along those lines that I'm getting, that help them figure out the basic lines of understanding so that everybody can be grounded in that, so that everybody can be knowing that if there's some confusion, we can fall back on that common recipe of interaction. And where it starts is actually looking at all the common denominators, right? These are even common denominators such as the fact that most of the individuals here have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a talking head. Even those things were considered. It was a very big telepathic junction. There's been a lot of meetings on this. The kinds of meetings are done typically in a broadcast format between ships, and so there's just like how we have like Skype, and we have multiple group chats and things like that. There's delegates and experts, and it took quite a bit of time. And as individual spacefaring groups come into this space, they tend to look at, we'll say, the biggest presence as sort of like the authority. And so for quite some time, there was sort of like this building up of who had the most ships and the highest population, which can be seen in energy. They can view the energy of, almost like reading the auras combined on a ship or something. And they would use this to determine who kind of had the leading edge decision making sort of like main vote, because when they look, you know, when you're journeying to other places in the galaxy, you're always looking to figure out how things work there. Like what, you know, how are things operating here? What is their belief system? What do we need to figure out in order to actually begin having a communication or a relationship with them? And so they use population, they use ships, they use presence, and for a time there was sort of like a building up of just having numbers of ships in our solar system, indicating, you know, who is kind of like the leading authority over, you know, the humans at the moment, the present tense humans. And so population was kind of like the game in terms of what was going on out there. But it became clear that insight was not based on but it was clear that presence alone wasn't the only function. They're describing it as just because you're the biggest bully on the block doesn't mean that you run the show or that you've got the greatest wisdom on a subject, right? So she is part of apparently a really ancient organization that works to sort out new levels of consensus. And right now, on a planet, it's what nations have to do. And they need to find all their common grounds, and that includes religious experiences. They need to find all the common grounds. Focus on the common grounds, and that becomes the new world religion, the new world perspective that can establish something that everybody will agree on. Like everybody agrees that you need to have food, right? Everybody agrees that everybody should have shelter. Everybody agrees you should have clean water. After that, things are secondary. Everybody agrees that electricity is an extremely ideal experience. Everyone agrees that health is an extremely ideal experience. These are all clear, and it sounds like we're pointing out the obvious. Like everybody has 2 arms and 2 hands and 2 feet. That's clear. But at the same time, you work from those very, very basic core points, and you move out and you ask questions. And you get to the point where, does everybody need electricity? Or is it more like everybody needs to be warm? Is that why electricity is necessary? Or do we need everybody to have internet? Is that a necessary concern? And these questions come up, and they take time to sort of develop and to get communicated around so that everybody can develop a consensus on what is of value. Now, on the planet, it's not true. Not everybody needs electricity. You've got great deals of people who live without electricity, and great deals of people who, you know, live without internet. So the consensus for that is not actually functionally a truth at this moment in time. But there are spiritual consensuses as well beyond the physical needs, as beyond the physical demands on the body. And these are the things where everyone should feel safe. Everyone should feel that their voice can be heard too, not overwhelmed by the bully in the corner. So this idea that might makes right is not at everyone's highest truth. So these things get considered, and things as those bases for a galactic society that humans represent. They are a galactic society. They just can't fit into the galactic society because we haven't decided exactly what our consensus is, because we have a system in place at the moment, as it appears to the Pleiadians, as she's pointing it out. Victoria's pointing this out, where we're made to actually create distance from each other. And it's not that it's so much a plan, so much as a set of distortions that get more and more wobbly. It's almost like, note that in nature, distortions sort themselves out. Mother Nature will cleanse a situation if it's not productive and it's not sustainable. So we're going through right now a wobble, as they pointed out, where we're putting things that are a high priority to the top of the list. So I was just about to ask Don to share his 2 cents and to ask her a question, but I'll bring him right back. All right. Well, I was just about to give you an opportunity to speak with Victoria or to share your comments on what she's brought up so far. Except that I am having Skype crash multiple times in a moment. All right, trying one more time here, Don.
Can you see me?
Yeah. If my computer continues to overheat, we'll just try it out next time without you running video. I know it's going to be sad to not see you, but
what are you going to do? I've got Sebastian's picture. We could throw that up there.
Oh,
that he did for me for the ad. Actually, I don't really have anything to ask Victoria. I mean, I can get into a discussion, but I don't know how much longer we're going to be staying here. Are there others that want to get in there too, or if anybody else has a question for it? Because I keep getting dropped out here.
Right. I'll actually let her keep talking.
Okay. Well, Victoria, maybe she can address, if she's still going to talk. Just address the fact that even though we use terms here on the planet to talk about the Illuminati or the Cabal, and we've got there's long histories of these groups of people that have kind of controlled things, but essentially, in the big scheme of things, it was our humanity's way of keeping us away from this information and this and moving into these ascensions. And so how are we as far as moving past that now? And is that something that we're really close to, or is there still work to be done there?
There's two things she's saying. One, their initial purpose, original purpose, was to be a guide in order to wake up. So this whole idea of them being bad guys is sort of like a slap in the face wake up sort of experience. Like, throw water on you while you're sleeping and say, get up, time to move, time to change, time to, change posture, time to adjust. And so since then, it's been a constant asking, are you ready to do this? Are you ready to do this? Are you ready to do this? And asking society as a whole. Now, since they also adopted a certain degree of making society work against us and to train us in a particular way, they're also asking, hey, do you want mainstream media to still teach you? Do you want mainstream media to still operate this way? Do you want, this and that and that? It's much like parents asking you exactly what do you want to do and how are you going to play? And it's not that they don't like us. It would seem in many ways that they don't like us. But somebody's got to be the one that says, hey, this is how you push the buttons to get somebody to wake up. And from the Pleiadians' perspective, once there is a consensus of understanding, yes, that's why we have a relationship in the first place, that you're asking us to wake up so that we can make our own decisions here, then they start playing with us. Then they start supporting us. Saying, well, what are your good ideas going forward? We have some ancient ideas on how things should work out, ancient ideas of how we think government should work, ancient ideas of how we think money should work. What are your ideas? And when you've pulled together enough consensus, we'll find that that's going. And what we want, essentially, is a forum for bright minds to find their way to the surface. And they believe that this sort of survival of the fittest is survival of the brightest. And it's not intellectual, it's survival of those that basically take charge. Okay? And so from their perspective, they're powerful. They're extreme minority in population. But they're powerful because they literally point out that they know exactly what it takes to be sovereign. They know exactly what it takes to understand how reality comes into existence. So when facing the truth is exactly what you're ready for. And that truth is involved in making personal self-discoveries before you will have that empowerment and be essentially in the same sort of role as deciding what the world will be like. Now, so you start affecting the consensus in this way where people say you're powerful because you can change, you can change governments, you've got a very powerful influence. Well, in this new world, as you realize, manipulation is going by the wayside. It's not working so well. In this new world, transparency and truth and being honest with what your experience is and assuming that everyone else's experience is also honest, that's where it's going. Now, I was mixing some of my perspective with what she was saying, but the point that she wants to essentially let everyone hear is that there's this, we'll call it growing pains. They're pointing it out as these growing pains are what we're focusing on right now. We're saying, why can't we do this? Why can't we? Why can't we? Why can't we? Say, you're getting it done. Saying, look at the progress. Focus on what's working. See this. Now you've come to practice this element where you learn to distrust people who say a lot of nice things and don't deliver on their promises. Sort of like yes men, or presidents. They promise a lot of things in their elections and they don't actually get it done. Well, nobody can make promises but you to yourself. And a promise is just a commitment to head in a direction. From the Pleiadians' perspectives, they don't accept anyone's promises. They only accept people's intentions. Because the intentions speak louder, and they know that intentions are more flexible than a promise could ever be. In which case, a promise can find its own distortion when it comes to the limits of its ability to be of use. So, when you're looking at an intention, you're facing a point where you know that your options are unlimited so long as you're following the path of least resistance and the path of basically finding your own inner awesome in that moment. Now, I'm losing Don fairly regularly, so I'm going to continue without him and sort of wrap up if I can't get him. So Don, I'm losing you pretty regularly.
Yes, you are.
So we're gonna wrap up this show for the moment. Real close here, but I'm gonna share a couple more things, and if I lose you again, I'm just gonna let you know that you can listen to the live feed.
I will.
Okay, and then hit the chat room. Okay.
Perfect.
So essentially, finding your inner sovereignty is finding your own personal level of empowerment within the context of what are you relative to what you've been taught and the consensus. So it's almost like knowing what you are separate from everything else. Once you find that, you eventually get to a point where you realize you and everyone else are the same, because you start finding the eventual infinite similarities between you and everyone else. That's a journey that most people are not interested in making. They're not interested in waking up from a complete illusion and seeing themselves infinitely as God and completely in control of all circumstances. The purpose of living a human life is to explore in a human way. So we have a human experience. The purpose of growing up as a Pleiadian is to have a Pleiadian experience. And as much as we could say, it must be nice living with the Pleiadians, they won't take us as a community. We'll be so different from them. We would be forced to adopt the customs and practices that Pleiadians are. And in greater part, that is why we stand in a position where we're not immediately able to join the galactic community. Because we stand in a position where we don't know ourselves well enough. And if we were to join those in the stars, and some have, mind you, we would lose our identities to living with them. But those that are here right now are not here to give us that privilege. They know that we have that human experience, and we're not fulfilled until we've played out that human experience. Otherwise, we wouldn't incarnate here. We have an incarnation to decide to be here because literally we're to discover who we are as a human and then exercise ourselves in the human element. So she has something else to say. Oh, she's saying she loves humans. She loves Pleiadians too. But she loves this place where humans are finding and deciding and choosing and stating their personal values. Just, you're going to find that every time you come across a limitation, more or less it's a limitation introduced to you by a consensus need. And the consensus holds itself together by a set of beliefs and practices. But anything that you practice and believe will essentially come true for you. And if you find that being a stick in the mud in a world where the consensus is very difficult for you to work with, as in, say, you wish to live in a moneyless way, but you're having difficulty living with people who live with money, then essentially it's up to you to introduce your profound perspective to them and offer that to them. Everything fundamentally is an invitation. Everything is an offer for you to pick up and go with. As you picked up and went with the consensus, you're in a place to pick up and go with what your heart sings for. And you can find a lot of things in consensus. It's almost like finding out where you belong. A lot of young adults and teenagers are in that journey, trying to find out where they belong. But they're trying to find out where they belong within the confines of limits. You are limitless, and you are to discover exactly what your preferences are in terms of where you would like to explore limitation in your own way. Now, that mostly involves becoming limitless in the first place. So, give me a moment. She wants to share that she would like to join us next week with questions. So, if there's questions that evolve from this, she would like to participate in a conversation answering those questions. But she understands that even though this time the Pleiadians got more time to talk, she does acknowledge that this is the wrap-up period for this one. I'm going to let you guys go. I know there's quite a few wonderful questions in the chat room, and what I think we're going to do is we're going to do a mostly question and answer in the next show. So I'll be collecting those, so leave comments in the video on YouTube and on the shared links in Facebook, those that have come across it. Or you can send questions to Julien at julienwells.com, and we'll gather those up and we'll take them one at a time and see what time we have left for other things to discuss. Anyhow, I am taking subjects for the shows. Whether I get to them immediately in the next show or not is still up to be seen. But you know, please, I'm very open to feedback, and I'm very interested to see what lines of discussion you would like me and Don to carry on. But for the moment, have a good evening. Namaste.